Welcome to this special episode of Innovations in Education with David Adams, where David is interviewed by the student hosts of the LGJ Sports Media Beyond the Sports podcast. The students attend the Bronx School for Law, Government, and Justice, an urban assembly school. If you're an advocate and fan of empowering student voices, you're in for a treat. We hope you enjoy.
Welcome to Innovations in Education. I'm your host, David Adams, CEO of the Urban Assembly. And on this show, we bring guests every single episode who have made things work in public education. This show is about the innovators. This show is about the folks who are solving problems. This show is about making things work in education. Now, there's a lot of shows out there talking about what's wrong in the education systems, and those are great shows. There's some shows talking about what we're not doing well, and there's a lot to learn from those, but that's not this show. This show is going to be featuring educators who are making things work for young people and improving public education.
Welcome back to another episode of LGJ Sports Media Beyond the Sports. My name is Fatou, and I'm joined by my amazing co-hosts Gabby and Leana. Today, we're honored to have a very special guest, an educational leader, the CEO of Urban Assembly, and host of the Innovations in Education podcast, David Adams. David, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. Very excited to be here.
Anytime.
So Mr. Adamas told us last time you came to LGJ, you were sitting in that very chair.
I did.
And took a picture.
Yes.
So we thought, why not put you in the same chair, but have 25 cameras in front of you?
Let's go real time, right? I saw this setup and I thought to myself, this is a great example of learning in action, right? Not just thinking about things, but doing things. And Mr. Adamas, he was like, you don't have to just talk about it, take a picture. I want to get my students together and we can do it in real life. So that's why I'm here today.
Yeah. We need that picture, by the way.
I will make sure you get it.
Absolutely. Before we dive in, we'd like to send a shout out to Kristen, who couldn't be here today. We hope we can host you sometime soon.
So as we know, you have an MED in psychology.
I do.
And we could see how that career is also important to aspects of today's life.
Sure.
We would like to know what led you into this career, what inspired you.
It's a great question. So psychology is the field that studies human behavior, right? And so when I got into education, I was always very interested on the relationship between behavior and achievement. So my first areas of study were in this thing called social and emotional learning, where I studied how students acquire skills that allowed them to solve problems for themselves and for other people in terms of interpersonal skills, problem solving within yourself, like managing your emotions, understanding your feelings, and also interpersonal, like managing to solve problems between people, conflict resolution skills. So I've always been interested in thinking about the relationship between how people feel and what people think and the kind of skills that underlie those different things. So psychology gave me the understanding of what is the research, what are the basis for human behavior and for human learning, and then how does that show up in schools, and then how does it show up in interactions, and how does that show up in relationships? And that's how I got to the place that I am today, sitting in this seat with you guys.
When was the first time that you really noticed those two things working together with each other?
That's a great question. So what I noticed is that students, when I was in high school, who tended to do better, tended to be able to focus more deeply, tended to be less distracted. In fact, this is a true story. Anybody run track here?
I did.
Track, okay. What I noticed is that the kids on the cross country team tended to be the smartest kids in the school. And it's not because they're super athletic, but because they were doing the same kinds of things like delaying gratification, setting goals, working hard towards an idea that they were doing in their academic settings. Mm-hmm. So I started to realize that intelligence and how smart you are may be less important than how well you can delay gratification, set a goal, and do things that are hard in general. And that's where I started to think about, if we could teach those skills, I think we can also support students' academic skills and also help them be better people in the world.
That was really interesting how you were able to correlate psychology, like how students think mentally, into how that affects their education, because I feel like that's not like really emphasized nowadays, but like it is focused on, but not extremely. And it's my first time hearing like how you can go into like psychology and also like into education. That's really
For sure. I mean, essentially education is applied psychology in a number of different ways, right? teachers not only need to understand the movement and the learning processes, but they need to understand the students in front of them. They need to understand motivation, what motivates students, what builds a sense of efficacy that makes us feel like I can do this on my own. They need to understand interpersonal dynamics. A great teacher is paying attention to whether or not a student's getting overwhelmed with a task or whether a student's understimulated. And he's constantly just watching what's going on in the classroom and then responding and then pulling back. And so that's why teaching can be so complex, because you're thinking about the task, but you're also thinking about the people, the students who are doing that task and how they're interacting with each other and with the task itself.
Now that you say that, I think about me, like here in the school, I was a pre-teacher. It was an internship.
Very cool.
So I got to work together with teachers and help students. So then we would have personal development, just like teachers would.
Yeah.
And we would go into things of like how students work in the classroom and how also teachers have to work together with students. And not just that, teachers have to be extremely observant.
Yes.
And when teachers also observe other classrooms, it helps them teach and build off what they can do better. So it's like not only are teachers teaching, but they're also paying attention to their students and like their well-being, how well they're grasping the material, and not just how well they're grasping the material based off like how good the teacher is, but also what they have going on mentally. Is that affecting how they grasp the material in their day-to-day?
Yeah, you said it perfectly. So it's part of teaching is paying attention to how your students are reacting to the material, each other, and the task. And so great teachers balance all these things at once. They balance the objective, what is it you're trying to accomplish, and then they're paying attention to students. And they're saying, okay, well, the student may be feeling overwhelmed or the student's disengaged. And the more they know about their students, the more likely they are to be able to pick up on these things and then re-engage them towards the task successfully. So psychology plays a big role in great teachers and in great teaching, and not just because of the learning aspect of it, which is just like, how do people learn and how do students learn? But I think as importantly in the relational aspect and the social emotional aspect, most students feel the best with a teacher who is very highly attuned to what's going on in the classroom. When they're frustrated, a teacher who can pay attention to that and then redirect that student back to that task makes students feel seen and more motivated to work hard for that teacher or for that classroom.
With students, I know a lot of people say that you can't really teach a lot of things to children. Like a lot of things, as in morals and stuff, or there's a lot of things that can't be taught. It's more of a character thing and about the students. So how do you go about teaching students where they already have these kind of things already taught into them at home or outside of school, and it's difficult to try and teach them and change their mind a little bit?
Well, that's such a great question. So first, the good news is that there are skills that students can learn and they can be taught, and we call them social and emotional skills. These are skills like knowing what you're feeling, knowing your emotions, knowing the emotions of others. These are skills like using I messages. I'm feeling X because of Y for conflict resolution. These are skills like self-management, where you're able to set a goal, know how you're feeling, and then manage yourself towards that goal and your feelings. And so there's a separate set of skills that are a little different from character, but they can support character, right? So you can teach these skills. Just your advisor might give you a sense of a lesson and then have you practice some things like working in a group and collaborating and taking turns. And so those are the social and emotional skills that we care about and I care about across the urban assembly. Now, I think when it comes to character, it's a little bit more complex, but one of the key things is to define it. What does it mean to be X, Y, or Z? What does it mean to be a champion of the charge? What does that mean for you? Are there models that children have that can reinforce those character traits? Are there ways to value those and get reinforced in the school, right? And so if you are learning one thing at home and then you're learning another thing at school, I think the challenge is that students will have different senses and different value structures that are reinforced. If you go home and your parents are like, somebody looks at you, punch them in the face, no questions asked, and you come to school and somebody is like, well, you should talk to your teacher or work it out with that person, then it's a little confusing for the student. What should you do in different contexts? I like to think that when you talk to parents and you talk to community members and you explain what it is that we're trying to accomplish, most people are like, I can get behind that. As long as my son, my daughter is safe, as long as you keep them in a safe environment, most parents believe that making good choices and good decisions, learning how to resolve conflicts effectively, those are worthy things that are important in the community, at home, and in school.
Yes. What you showed us or what you told us tells us a lot about how you value people and their emotions too. In Charles for Doug podcast, you also talked about how education plays a big role, but also how AI is also something important in producing its curriculum.
Yeah. We at the Urban Assembly have launched 2 AI solutions. One is around teacher feedback. So we want to make sure teachers get more feedback more frequently so they can practice, develop their skills. And so we have a tool that watches teachers and then automatically lets them know, for example, how often they ask questions. Are they open-ended or closed-ended questions? It lets them know how often they use respectful language, encouraging language in the classroom. It shows them the teacher talk time versus student talk time. And it uses these little clips so teachers can see themselves doing those things, right? And so it's an example for us on how we're thinking about how to use artificial intelligence to solve problems in the educational space. And we talk about constraint-based problem solving and program design. So right now, the reasons why teachers don't get as much feedback as they need or deserve is because it's very expensive. And so we're not going to replace a superintendent or replace a principal or an instructional coach. But in between those spaces, a teacher can watch themselves, develop their own practice, just like you might do it if you're practicing, let's say, basketball or sports. What sports you guys play?
Softball.
Softball. Have you ever watched yourself play softball?
Yeah.
Okay. So what did you learn when you watched yourself play softball?
I watched my positioning.
Good.
And how I reacted to certain situations.
Good. That's the exact same idea we're doing with our teachers, right? We do it for our students in sports, but our teachers don't have that opportunity.
Yeah.
Now at the Urban Assembly across our network, teachers will have the opportunity to watch themselves, teach, get feedback so they can develop themselves in real time.
How do you make sure that AI is a very scary thing. It's both a good and a bad thing, where it's beneficial and it allows you to have access to a lot of different things, but it's also the misuse of AI as well. So how do you make sure AI isn't being misused and is being used properly? And
Well, it's a great question. The first thing I'll say is that we have a partnership with 2 organizations. One is called AI EDU. The other one is the AI Policy Lab. And our goal right now across the Urban Assembly is to make sure that our students and our teachers and our principals have what they call AI literacy, have an understanding of the capabilities of AI so they can use the tool to solve problems for themselves. So the first thing is to educate, right? So right now across our network, most of our staff, I think 5 groups of staff and 5 groups of principals will get an in-depth education around what AI can do and what it can't do so they can prepare themselves to support their kids. The second thing is that you got to understand what problem you're solving with AI, or else you get yourself into a weird situation. So, for example, when you guys are writing an essay, why do you think your ELA teacher assigned that task?
That's a really good question. You said when I'm writing an essay, why do I think that ELA teachers assign that task? It's for self-improvement.
Okay.
Most of the time. It's also to see where I land, where I can improve.
Yeah.
It shows the teachers what does the student need, what is their strengths.
Yeah.
And it also teaches me my strengths and my weaknesses, because I write essays and I'm like, this, it doesn't really look like it's me. It doesn't look strong enough. So in a way, it really teaches me. It shows me I can improve. Maybe I could take further steps to make greater improvement.
That's a great answer, right? A lot of times we think about writing as structured thinking. It forces you to create ideas and relationships between your ideas in a way that somebody else can follow. So to answer your question, let's say you just put the essay prompt and the rubric into ChatGPT. That doesn't actually teach you how to write, right? And ChatGPT already knows how to write.
Yeah.
So in this case, you're not solving any problems for yourself. You may be solving a time problem. You might be solving I want to get an A on this essay and I don't want to write it, right? But ultimately, great thinkers and great writers are what's necessary for our country and our communities to improve. And those are you guys. So we want you to learn how to write and we want you to learn how to reason, and writing is one of the ways that we do that. So a student may misuse AI because they may not believe that this is worth my time, or the task may not be interesting. But ultimately, I want young people to learn how to read, write, and think. And that's where we have the education system for.
Speaking on how AI has been implemented into the Urban Assembly and how it's being used to help teachers in classrooms, what are some fears that you have, like within the educational environment, that AI can cause?
It's a great question. So when we were designing our tool, it's called Project Cafe, the classroom automated feedback environment. Some people said, let's use this to tell teachers what they're doing well and what they're doing poorly. And what I want to do is what Gabby did when she watched her softball. she was able to watch herself do something and think about, well, what's my positioning? How did I do that well? So you can overanalyze something with AI, and you can use the AI to replace people's judgment, right? And you can be like, well, that was a high level question, or that redirection was effective. And the AI can start doing your thinking for you, which doesn't help improve teachers' judgment. So imagine you're looking at your softball video, and all of a sudden all this analysis comes in, and it's like your elbow's high and your positioning is off. Then you're no longer becoming an expert in your own development as a softball player. So this is an example, I think, of the difference between what you can do and what you should do. You can do a lot of things with AI, but remembering the problem of developing teachers' judgment in the classroom more quickly for less money, when you know that that's the goal, then you shape the AI system to reflect that goal. The other thing there's been a lot of movement with is things like lesson planning, teachers using a lot of AI to help plan lessons, which is fine. I think it's a good use. As long as the teacher is spending a lot of time familiarizing themselves with that lesson so they know what should be happening in the classroom, as opposed to being like, oh, I don't know, what did ChatGPT tell me the essential question was for the day? So just refining the problem sets, knowing what you're solving for using this tool will help both students and teachers be in the best situation to use it effectively.
I could definitely agree with teachers familiarizing themselves with AI, because as a pre-teacher last year, I was in shock when I found out that teachers like in the building that I would talk to did use AI, and they would tell me how they would use it to like create rubrics so they could know what to do. And to me, I was like, as students, you guys tell us not to use it, but here you guys are using it. So it's like, you guys are like criminals as well. So it's hilarious.
Criminals.
Yeah. So would you say that it's all right to use AI as long as you're not fully reliant to it and you're able to do it yourself and you're using it as if it was a teacher itself and teaching you other things?
I think that's a good way of thinking about it. So we hire people at the Urban Assembly and we do something called performance tasks. Essentially it's an assignment to get a sense of how well these people can reason, think, and demonstrate their competencies. And some people came in with a performance task. And so we started asking them questions about it. And they were like, I can't answer any questions. And it became obvious that they just put the performance task into AI, spit it out, and came in and plopped it on my desk, right?
Wow.
That doesn't really help me see their skills or competencies. We've also noticed that people are now using AI to write cover letters, which is like your letter in front of your resume that says, hey, I really want to work here, which is fine. But I see 6 cover letters that have the exact same language that I'm like, well, what's making you different? So I think that it's about using AI to solve problems. And time is a problem, but it's usually not the right problem to solve with AI ultimately, right? Because let's just use your example on teaching and learning. Let's say a teacher develops an assignment using AI. And let's say students develop a response using AI. And then teachers grade it using AI. And then students refine it using AI. And so now you have AI talking to each other and it's, hi, I'm AI here and I'm AI here and we're just having a good time. But the teacher doesn't understand the student's strengths and challenges, like we were talking about in their writing. And the student isn't having the opportunity to develop their thinking, right? It's all just being pushed into this artificial intelligence system. So the goal is to use AI to support learning, to drive learning in the classroom and other places. There's some good evidence that tutoring using AI has been really effective and students really can benefit from that. And the advantage of that is that it's on demand. I know our teachers at LGJ, they give out their cell phones. I know you can text them when you need help for things, but they also have lives, right?
Yeah.
And so it would be nice to have this tutor who you can ask a question of and say, I don't really understand this assignment. And the tutor is like, sure, I can help you do that, right? And that's the way to use AI to help you think. And the goal of education is to help our students think so they can contribute to our communities.
It'd be like if you wrote an essay, like for instance, she was talking about how important it is since it shows and it's right structured thoughts. So it's like if I would write an essay and instead of me telling ChatGPT to write the essay, I would write the essay and ask, hey, how can I improve this? That would be like supporting myself and not entirely making them write it for me. And then I don't have any sense of how do I write essays? How do I express myself? Because writing essays allows you to learn how to express yourself in structured format. So I feel like it does help. And I feel like a lot of students do need to hear that. It's not like she said, like it's like criminal, like you feel like you're a criminal using it. I feel like it should be known that it's not a bad thing to use it. It's only a bad thing if you use it the wrong way.
Yeah, you know, what you're saying is really resonant with me. And another fear that I would have is that, say you have a specific style in terms of your essays, let's say you like to open up with a quote or something, and everybody's kind of asking ChatGPT how to improve, and it's giving everybody similar advice.
Yeah.
And then things get homogenized. And so people's essays start to look very similar as opposed to reflecting your personality and your background, right? And so it's about not only asking for helps and problems, but also interpreting that against what you're trying to accomplish as an individual and a person. What's your voice? What's your perspective on this? How then does ChatGPT help refine your voice and refine your perspective? But I don't really care about the AI's perspective, right? Like I can just write a prompt and get that. I care about your perspective and your perspective because they reflect your lived experience, the way that you think, and the way you're communicating that on paper.
So what Gabby was saying, I've used AI when I've written essays and I asked it to check like for grammar and like standard English syntax and like punctuation to like fix it. It's like not a lot of students do that. They just tell AI to write the essay so to have them figure it out.
Yeah.
But it's like Gabby was saying, there is also like a bright side to it where you can actually use it, where it's like you're still doing your work and you're still learning and you're still improving, but you're also using it to do better and learn.
That's right. I think to the extent that we as educators give you guys tasks that are worthy of your time, that are worthy of your intellect and your cognition, then you will see that and you will think to yourself, well, I want to do this assignment because I want to think, and thinking is important. And I think to the extent that we don't always organize tasks that are worthy, people are like, well, we can just throw that in ChatGPT, right? So we're going to work as an education system to really think about what kind of tasks, what kind of objectives, what kind of assignments can be used with AI and still help you think and develop your ability to reason effectively. And that's one of the things that we've been caring a lot about at UA. What kind of tasks are worthy of our kids? And just like when you have a calculator in math, how do you use tools to help support thinking and drive thinking, not replace your thinking?
Yes. It was the same thing for me. Growing up, when I first was introduced to ChatGPT, I was relying on it to write my whole essay. And I found out it wasn't really my voice. I put in the AI detector, it was able to notice it. And it didn't really feel like me.
Yeah.
And then recently I started looking for like outlines. How can I better improve this? Like how Gabby and Leana were saying.
Yeah.
How can it help me improve it? How can it help me be a better person? How can it help me be a better writer in my essays?
Yeah.
So with that, how do you think educators can keep a rationale between teaching and the human side while you're using technology?
Wow, such a great question. It turns out, from my perspective, that teaching is a deeply relational activity. When we were in a pandemic, we had these instructional tools like Google Classroom, and teachers would put assignments on there, and students would do them or not, right? But there was this deep isolation. There was this deep sense of, I am doing this assignment rather than learning in community. When kids are in a community, when they're in a social context, not only do they learn more deeply, but they learn more effectively. So we need to ensure that we're using technology to push conversation, to push social interaction, to push relationships. There's been a move I've seen. I think the quote was 1 out of 5 kids, students, teenagers have a relationship with a chatbot, right? And I think that's a problem. I think that relationships are for people. You know what I mean? I think we already don't have enough high quality relationships in many of our lives.
Yeah.
And to divert that emotional energy to a computer bothers me. It's the same thing in the classroom. When students feel like their teachers see, know them, and care about their development, they work harder, they struggle for longer, and they think more deeply. Now you can support that with AI. You can help give more feedback more frequently on maybe writing assignments so that a teacher can ask you to do the same writing assignment 4 or 5 times, right? And not have to be up till 9 o'clock grading it. But ultimately, this is about students learning from each other, students learning from the task, and teachers watching how students learn and then giving them feedback to refine their thinking and their learning.
So basically, AI has a way of affecting school culture and like the environment.
Sure. And this is, so you guys, did you start with your cell phones? You started giving them in last year or this year?
2019.
2019. Okay. So one of the things we saw in terms of like cell phones in schools is like people's attention was not towards each other, but towards this machine.
Technology.
And attention is really precious. You know what I mean? So when a student feels attention of their peers, their attention of their teacher, they're just more likely to work hard. And learning is hard work. It's not easy. It's like frustrating, right? So having that person know that and pay attention to you makes students feel more comfortable about working hard, and that's what drives learning. It also drives relationships. So I think there's a role for AI. There's a school out in Texas, it's called Alpha Schools, where they just put the kids on the computers and AI for 2 hours a day, and they just learn from that space. I don't think that's going to be a model that's going to be effective for public education.
Yeah. I mean, students all learn different. Like, I'm a very social person. Like, I learn from being around others and talking to others.
Sure.
But then there's also students that might not learn from that. Also, in your podcast with Ron Berger, he said kids become more respectful and more responsible at schools or less, depending on the school culture, which shows that other people are also noticing that school culture is really important for students learning. How do you know that a school's culture is really good and really high? What are the signs for a school's culture?
Let's see. So we used to do some like walkthroughs, and we would look at positive climate. So one of the things that you can tell for a positive school culture is when people are using a lot of people's names. This shows that they know who they are. When you see people smiling and laughing. When you see people, it's going to sound weird, but like in physical proximity with each other, like touching each other, dapping each other, giving each other hugs. These things reflect a culture climate that also drives learning. And the point that you were making there, when we graduate high school and we go to college or we go on to the job, we're typically working in groups in collaboration with other people. So this idea that we would learn in isolation, but then have to work in groups, I don't think makes any sense, right? It's not about how smart you are. It's about how smart you are in the context of this group that we're working in, right? And so most people do better in terms of being able to contribute to a group or a society when they learn in the same way that they need to generate that understanding. So that's why I think collaboration matters. Also, talking helps thinking. I talk a lot. I have a podcast. My wife would just say I talk a lot, right? But like the more I talk about a thing, the better actually I understand it. Sometimes I'm talking, I'm like, what? That's pretty good, Dave. And I write it down. And then I'll write a piece about it and I'll publish a paper on it. But talking helps refine your thinking. Writing is the most structured way to refine your thinking. And so interactions drive learning.
Yeah.
Yes, I agree. When I'm talking to others, like my team or my family or friends, I could be learned with new terms. I could be introduced to new terms.
Yeah.
And then I'd be like, oh, I'll just write it down.
Yeah.
And with that, I'm able to increase my thinking. What you said about collaboration, we could see how it's really a key thing.
Yes.
Collaboration, without collaboration, it's not really teamwork there. It's not really strong in a sense. And with collaboration, we're able to better strengthen ourselves.
Yes. Yeah, 100%. I mean, softball teams have different positions for a reason.
Yeah.
Your different strengths are allocated to different positions to achieve the mission, which is to win the game. And real life is just like that. Some people are real strong. Some people are kind of weak. Some people have really deep thinking. Some people have shallow thinking. Some people talk a lot. Some people don't talk a lot. But teams are places where each person's strength comes together to accomplish a common goal. And you want to learn how to work in teams to be successful. And that's why schools are not just people on computers.
Yeah.
That's why, especially at LGJ, folks are focusing on you guys talking to each other and developing and co-developing learning. And then the teacher's checking in and they're like, yeah, that makes sense. That's cool. Let me see your writing. Now consolidate that with an essay or a task, right? And I'll give you feedback. That's really high quality education.
What would you say are some things that can help schools that are like diverting from such a bonded like school culture or good environment? What do you say were some things that can help those schools, or would you just say to stick to collaboration and emphasize on?
It's interesting. I think that in order to create a classroom where students collaborate, work together, take risk, you have to have a educator in the room that's kind of very grounded in themselves, right? Sometimes teachers fear that giving students the opportunity to interact will mean that they lose control or that they won't hit their learning objective, because I gotta hit the learning objective. It's like math is very paced, right? If we don't do this today, we're gonna miss this lesson tomorrow. So what I would say is to believe in your students, check in on your students a lot, always be moving around, checking, listening, making micro adjustments. But students will do well when given the space and the time to talk about their ideas. And when students feel like they're honored, when teachers say, hey, this is your space, here's the objective, let's work together to make that happen, most students will raise that the goal. So there's a little bit of fear. There's a little bit of concern about the difference between if I don't say these words, students will not learn.
Mm-hmm.
And we can replace that with, I'm going to create a learning environment or learning experience. I'm going to create a learning experience for our students. And it's going to involve each other, the material, and me. These are 3 things.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to be checking in to see how it's going. But if we do that well, not only does it motivate students because they understand that teachers believe in their ability to learn, but it's also a space the teacher doesn't have to work that hard.
As a student, I'm really reliant on learning with other students, like building off each other. Like, I don't like too much when the teacher's just talking the entire class.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like, it really throws me off, and not for nothing, but makes me dislike the teacher's form of teaching.
Yeah.
I like when I'm able to work together with my peers and build off, like, not what the teacher just taught us, but also our questions and our thoughts and what we believe.
Yeah, because you're smart and you have experiences. And this is why we're talking about the essay, right? Like, I don't want to hear about ChatGPT's version. I want to hear your thoughts and your experiences. And when we bring those things to bear, then you have a learning experience and you can learn from each other. The one thing you said there that I think that's also resonant with me is this idea of listening. So one of the hard things to do is to listen, right? So building off of people's points, keeping those ideas moving. And when you do that well, then you're going to have a really deep, rigorous conversation. But listening is a really hard skill. It's a social and emotional skill.
I feel like it's kind of hard with, like, when I also did pre-teaching as well, but I was English.
Okay.
And I think one of the hardest things was each student is a different character. Each student has their own different personality, their own way of learning.
Yeah.
So trying to make sure and trying to, like, teach it all generalized so, like, everybody can learn was, like, really difficult. And like, I had another pre-teacher with me, so we would split into, like, different groups, since it was me, the other pre-teacher, and then the teacher himself. And we would kind of split and try to work. And it was just a lot of learning about each student in self, and learning, okay, this student learns this way, this student learns this way. They're in a group together. How do I make sure both of these students can both learn at the same time? So props to teachers, because
props to teachers.
it was such a struggle for me to do it for a class. Now imagine doing that for the whole entire day.
Yeah.
Something I wanted to come back to this about the AI detectors, about AI detectors when Fatou was talking about it. One thing about me that kind of scares me about AI is how unreliable AI detectors are, because when I write my essays, I would say I'm a strong writer, and people tell me I'm a strong writer. But one fear of mine is, what if I write my best essay ever and a teacher puts it through AI detector and it says it's AI?
Sure.
For me, I'm going to get less confident in my work, and I'm going to say, oh, well, now I have to dumb down my work because of this. One of my fears with AI is it kind of brings students down, because AI puts this kind of like rubric and kind of this standard of people should be writing like this. And it kind of uses patterns. So it's kind of like, how should I write? Should I write the strongest I can so I know I'm good, or should I write so this doesn't get detected by AI? How do you feel about?
I think, first off, your point around AI detectors is one that I've heard a lot of times. On the real, straight up, they are unreliable. So let me just be clear on that. And certainly I've heard students say that I'm worried or I fear how AI detectors reflect my actual writing. And the other thing that's seen happen is I don't want to write unless AI is with me. Right? I no longer have a sense of efficacy around my ability to generate a great piece of work. I think for our teachers and for our educators, the key is to be able to understand the relationship between what a student is thinking and what AI is doing. We talked about using AI to give you feedback on grammar and syntax. I want to produce confident writers, confident thinkers who believe in themselves and their ability to represent their thoughts in word. And I think to the extent that AI can help support that, which is offering perhaps feedback, offering different levels of questions that help students think and respond and reflect, rather than saying do this and do that, then I think that's good. To the extent that a student starts to believe that AI will write better than they would, then they don't want to write anymore. And that's not what I want to happen. So I just think that our goal as educators is to prepare young people to contribute to their communities, right? That means get a job, have a family, go vote. And all these things are grounded in our ability to think, reason, and communicate ourselves with others. And anything to me that takes away from our ability to communicate, reason, and interact well with others is something that takes away from our educational mission. Anything that supports that is something that supports our educational mission. And so we have at the UA been really, really focused on using AI to support thinking, to support relationship building, and support our young people's ability to contribute to their community.
Talking about UA, how did you find out about Urban Assembly? How did you join Urban Assembly?
That's a great question. So I was just at Superintendent Louisan's retirement. I started out my career in New York City working in special education in District 75. It's a district that we focus on supporting students with special needs.
Yeah.
And my background was in social and emotional learning. So I worked with students who had challenges in their behavior or their emotions. And I worked hard to develop systems that allow those students to make good choices and make decisions so that we can educate them in what we call the least restrictive environment. And so I did that work for 5 years. And then they were hiring a director of social emotional learning at the Urban Assembly. So I came and I interviewed. I went on like 6 interviews with our founder, Richard Kahn. And then I did that for about 7 years. And then for the last 5 years, I've been leading the Urban Assembly as CEO.
With your role in being a CEO, how do you see that connect back to your major in psychology?
That's a great question. As a CEO, my job is to provide purpose and motivation and direction in order to improve our organization. And so the people who I'm providing purpose to are our staff and our principals. The people I need to motivate are our staff and our principals, and the people I provide direction to. So a great CEO is a leader of people, right? You could talk about strategy, you could talk about budgets, but ultimately a great leader has to focus on people. And so I think psychology helped prepare me to think about the role people play in organizations and help prepare me to help lead people effectively.
Yes, what you say connects to other leaders. Like we could see Trump, Mamdani, how they value what people think, how they look for the American society, how they can help the American society as a whole, instead of just focusing on the role. They look into the psychological aspects of the human brain.
For
like
sure.
how do they feel?
Yeah.
How would they go into these things?
Yeah.
And it really helps you strengthen as a leader and others strengthen as a leader too.
Yeah, I appreciate that. It's been interesting for me in the last 2 or 3 years to recognize that emotions play such a large role in how people make decisions and how people make choices. And sometimes you'll talk to a person and you'll be like listing your points one by one, and you recognize that like people are not actually reasoning through their cognition or through their they're reasoning through their emotions. They're like, I like this thing or I like this person. And then they use that to backwards map how they think.
Yeah.
And so you got to really listen to people. You have to understand not just what they say, but how they're feeling and what the feelings is behind what they say. And that's a really good way to try to think about, okay, what does this person need to be motivated? What do they respond to? What do they care about? And ultimately, leadership is about moving people. Great leaders move people. And if nobody's following you, you're not leading.
It's kind of these like emotional biases in our heads where a lot of us, or a lot of people, humans in general, will go based off of a lot of, it's hard for people to try and go based off of their cognition and how they think and everything. People always say, oh, use your brain first, use your brain.
Yeah.
But a lot of people tend to use their heart and emotions
Sure.
first, which, how do you try to combat that in your day-to-day life?
Well, I mean, I think this idea of social emotional learning is helpful. When people can understand their emotions, they're more likely to see their emotions play out and see emotions of others play out, right? When you don't have a name for your emotions, it just comes and can be overwhelming. We talk about emotional carjacking, where like your emotions just come and they just drive your behavior. And there's no activation of your frontal lobe or your cognition to be like, is this what I want to do? Is this my goal? When I was working with kids one-on-one, I remember maybe they're in trouble or suspended. And I would say, hey, what were you trying to accomplish? And they're like, well, I was trying to get the teacher to not call on me. I was like, well, how did flipping that desk help that? And they're like, well, they didn't call on me, right? So helping young people recognize what they're feeling is an important contribution to helping them access what they're trying to accomplish and refine their thinking. I think that the more we teach kids about their emotions, the better they are at thinking. Because when you can see your emotions and you can recognize them, then you can tell the difference between what I'm feeling and what I'm thinking. And you can remember, all right, what's my goal? What am I trying to accomplish? And the same thing with other people. When we work with young people and they're in crisis, one of the things that we teach is the importance of listening. So let's say a young person's in crisis and they're like, rah, and they're throwing the desk and they're saying all these things. If you're working with them poorly, you're like, that's not correct. But actually it was at 2:00, not 3:00. And it's just like the kid gets even more upset because they're not really talking to you. They're venting their emotions, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the good thing to do is to just like spend time and be like, I hear you. That sounds frustrating. I know that must be difficult. And when a kid comes back down, then you can re-engage in their kind of cognitive and thinking, right?
Yeah.
When you do it poorly, people are arguing and the kid is already in crisis. And an educator may say, that's not what you said, but that just creates more crisis, right? So to the point we were making before, listening is a very hard skill.
Mm-hmm.
It's very important to learn how to listen. If you listen well, people will feel seen and heard. This is why people shout, yeah? People shout because they don't feel heard. And so if you shout back, you just, now everybody's shouting. But if you can stop and listen and put yourself aside, then people are like, okay, I'm safe, I'm being heard, I'm here now ready to problem solve.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the challenge. It's not a complicated idea, but it's complicated to do well because it takes a lot of managing of one's own emotion to help other people do the same. So thinking, feeling, very closely related.
Everything that you're saying is resonating with me, like about listening, because as a friend and also as a student, when my friends are going through things or peers in my environment, sometimes it's hard to differentiate and listen to them and listen to what they want or do what's best for them.
Yeah.
Because sometimes as a friend, you want to do what's best for them and be like, oh, I don't think you should be in this situation, and tell them what's best for them instead of listening to them and listening to what they want.
Yeah.
So in hearing how this also correlates with like students, it's really interesting to me, everything about listening. Like me as a person, I feel like I'm a really emotionally intelligent person because I can like really understand people and understand like what they need at the time.
Yeah.
Being in youth court as well, which is something that's in the school that works with restorative justice with students.
Yeah.
It's really important to understand where the student is coming from and not just
Definitely.
like as second nature, like be a parent and, yell at them and be like, oh no, you shouldn't have done this because of this. It's best to listen to them and be like, okay, I see why you did this, but you understand how this can also affect you. So it's like hearing when you said that a kid had got suspended and you asked them like, what was your goal with this? It also correlates to like what I was just saying. That is like really resonates like with me.
I agree. With PAC, I was in PAC a while ago. It was like 8th grade. And me and the principal were talking how I think a kid got in trouble.
This must have been Miss Hernandez back in 8th grade. Yeah.
We were talking and the kid got in trouble for something and they were like, they didn't even ask what I want. They didn't even ask what I wanted. And we were talking, how do we fix that problem? Because it's a lot about character, how some staff or teachers will try to ask and try to figure out the story, while some will just go directly into reprimanding. Then you don't feel heard because you're just like, oh, well, they didn't even try to ask me why I did that. They didn't even hear why I wanted to do that. They just went straight to giving me attention, straight to doing this, straight to doing that, which is why we have youth court. We're trying to stop that problem by letting students express themselves and express why did they do that, while also still getting told that is not the way, which is you have to be able to listen, but you have to also be able to know when to step up and step back. Kind of what she was talking when you're talking to your friends, you're kind of like sitting there thinking, should I tell them what they need to hear, or should I just step back and just let them tell me what they want?
Well, here's the crazy thing about it, is if you're really doing a good job listening and asking questions, most people can come to the right answer in terms of what they're trying to accomplish. So I think we all see oftentimes, because we have a bunch of emotional intelligent people here, oh, this is your goal. Well, do this, do that, don't do that. That's not a good guy. That's not a good girl, right? We all see that very quickly, but just because we see it doesn't mean somebody else is going to do it.
Yeah.
And so when you're listening, you're asking questions, you're like, tell me more. Or like, it sounds like you're trying to do this and trying to do that, but I heard you say 1, 2, and 3. And the person's like, oh yeah, that doesn't really make any sense. So in the example that you gave, people need to be held accountable for their actions and their impact of their actions on the community and the learning community. And the best way to do that is to help them develop insights in terms of what they did so that they can choose better decisions in the future, right? And to the extent that punishment helps you choose better, it may or may not be true, right?
Yeah.
Like suspending a child may or may not help them make better choices. Maybe it just puts them back on the streets for 3 or 4 days or in school. But our job is to help kids make the best decisions for themselves and their community. And that means helping them understand like, well, what mistake did I make? what was I trying to accomplish? And what can I do differently in the future to get what it is that I'm trying to do, but in a way that's constructive and that's pro-social.
Yeah, it's kind of like removing the tunnel vision. And also it's like what we were talking about AI, kind of how like you don't want to just like fully like direct and tell them exactly.
It's exactly
it reminds
like
me of
that. It's exactly like
AP link right now. We're reading the Odyssey, and we're talking a lot about divine intervention. And how is it a question we asked is it really their journey or is it like Athena's journey, since she's the one helping them?
Right.
It's kind of like with the AI world. Is it really them, or is it just the AI pushing them and doing it for them and they're just believing their head? It's kind of like that, where is it really them going through that situation, or is it just you giving them advice and telling them what to do? It's not them coming to that conclusion on their own. It's you giving them the conclusion and them saying, oh, okay. So now the next time they get into that situation, they're not going to come to the conclusion on their own, because the last time they didn't get to the conclusion on their own, since somebody told them the conclusion themselves.
Can't say it any better. First of all, great analogy to the Odyssey. Great.
Thank you. We've been reading that all day. So
great call back to AI, but that's the key. What we want is young people to make good choices for themselves.
Yeah, also connects to Ron Berger podcast, where he says kids become more responsible, more respectful depending on the school culture.
That's right.
And I was able to listen and connect it to that, because if the school is providing things like youth corps, PAC, we see how the student feels heard. They feel more responsible. They feel more respectful towards the school environment. But let's say in a scenario we don't have PAC, we don't have youth corps. The student is not going to improve in any type of way.
Well, every school can provide spaces for students to practice their social emotional skills. Youth Corps, PAC are really good examples of that, because they're explicitly focused on conflict resolution and problem solving. But everything from working in groups to sports to after school activities provide students an opportunity to think about how they're feeling, how other people are feeling, and how they're solving problems. What we help schools do who are not at the Urban Assembly is we help them think about what structures they can use to support the social and emotional development of young people, even in math class, right? Like when students have to defend their rationale or defend their reasoning, that's an example of how students can learn how to communicate effectively. And for a teacher, if she's looking at a student's assignment and she has to imagine, okay, what do I think the student was thinking when they made this mistake or when they were effective? It's called attention to misconceptions, right? And a great teacher can put themselves in the head of their student and be like, oh, I think Fatou was thinking X, Y, or Z. And she'll write a little note and she'll be like, pay attention to this big idea next time. And then you'll be like, oh, Mrs. So-and-so or Mr. So-and-so not only cares about me as a person, but can see the work that I'm putting out. So there's always a chance to organize and structure social and emotional skill development for young people. But not everybody sees that as obvious, and that's what we help schools to do outside of the Urban Assembly.
I feel like we've quoted your podcast a couple times.
Sure.
I feel like because of that, we've listened into it a couple times.
I felt very seen and heard. I was like, I didn't know you guys were going to be pulling the quotes out.
That's great. We see that in your podcast. You speak to many different people from many different fields.
Yeah.
Who else would you like to see on your podcast, and where do you see your podcast going in the future?
Great question. So I'm thinking about the balance between practitioners, like university professors and district leaders. And the key thing I want to do with my podcast is I want to highlight people who've actually solved problems. In education, we can get a little down on ourselves. We can be like, we're never good enough. These kids deserve more. We've never accomplished anything. And I don't think that brings energy to the space, right? Do we have a lot of work to do? We do. But there have been people who have dedicated their lives, and our society and our communities are better for it. So what I want to do is I want to get a little bit more on the ground with a little bit more focused stories around people who went to a school, saw a problem, and solved it. Right now, I'm mostly talking to people I know, friends, family, the network of David Adams. But I'm going to be doing a little bit more outreach so that people can talk to me and call to me and say, hey, I have a school in Indiana, and here's how I supported that school's development. So that's what I'm going to be focusing on. I have a great respect for educators and the work that they do. I think teaching is one of the most important things that we do in our society to ensure that our young people can contribute to our society. And so to the extent that I can lift that up, that makes me happy.
Definitely. Props to teachers, because as a pre-teacher, man, they go through a lot. Like, it's a lot, especially when we would have personal development. They would talk about, like, the things that teachers, like, have to acknowledge. And it's, like, sometimes, like, I would do Spanish.
Yeah.
So the students sometimes, like, the teacher would have to break things down for certain students. And some students were, like, more advanced and would understand it. Others wouldn't. So it's hard to, like, when you have just one big class and you have to tend to different niches of people, is like, props to teachers 100%.
The circulating, oh my God.
Yes, yeah.
I definitely, and I feel like teachers don't give themselves enough credit or each other enough credit, and they do a lot. Like, my cousin personally, she's a teacher, and I remember with pre-teaching, our first mentor, he had told us, like, to watch Abbott Elementary.
Oh, yeah.
And he told us, and I watched it. I watched it before even being a pre-teacher.
Sure.
And he told us how, like, it really touches on what teachers go through on a day-to-day basis. And even on Abbott Elementary, you could see how they undermine themselves. And not only do they undermine themselves with the things that they accomplish and do for their students, but they go above and beyond for their students to have better and do more. So it really is crazy. So it's like, teachers really are great. They're great. And they're definitely great role models for, like, kids. And they just really set a great stepping ground. Like,
I agree.
Shout out to our teachers.
Yeah,
definitely.
I feel like some teachers, it's just like, they think they're doing the bare minimum.
Yeah.
Like, in your eyes, maybe it's just like, I'm doing my job. I'm doing the bare minimum. But for some students, it's like, wow, you're doing all this for me.
Yeah.
You're paying attention to me. You're doing all this. While it might be the bare minimum in your field, in our eyes, it's above and beyond.
Yeah.
So.
And at LGJ, I know teachers go above and beyond, right? I know they call, they check, they want to make sure your families are good. They want to make sure you guys get home. And they do that because they care about you guys as people, right? We talked about that earlier, right? It's not just about what you know, but it's about who you are, right? Character, champions of the charge. So teachers and educators, we hold that responsibility sacred, which is that young people who come through our institutions need to be the kind of people we want to have in our community.
I feel like as a senior here in the school, I feel like a lot of us do complain, oh my God, we're still here. But and we complain like, oh my God, we're still here. And it's like, we find teachers like, oh my God. But it's definitely like, LGJ definitely builds a great community for students to not just rely on teachers while they're in school, but also outside of the school once we graduate. So like a home we can still come back to and still communicate with our teachers and still, like, let them know about things. So it's like, as a senior here, I'm still like, but it's still like, I know I could leave this place knowing I could always come back and feel welcome.
Yeah. And you guys have Alumni Day, don't you?
Yes, I believe so. I'm not.
Okay. I thought I saw some. Okay.
Yeah. It's also, I feel like that's why schools are such a unique place compared to other places, because it's a place where, especially starting young, you see all these different people, different personalities all coming together. Sometimes they clash, sometimes they don't, but you see those personalities grow and kind of influence each other. Like, I could say I've been influenced by my friends, my teachers, my family. They all influenced me to become a bigger and better person. There might have been some things I didn't know how to do before. I didn't know how to react to situations, but looking at those around me, I've learned now how to deal with those situations, which is why schools are such a good and amazing place. I know sometimes I might be like, oh, I don't want to go to school. Oh, I don't want to be in school. But you learn so much, not even just from the classes, like you were saying about school culture, how seeing each other, the kids dabbing each other up, hugging each other. You learn even just from those interactions on how to talk to people. Yeah. Because when you're outside in the real world, you're going to have to talk to people all the time.
Yeah. And you guys are great talkers and great communicators. You build off of each other's responses and my own. And I'm very impressed by this interview and how you guys have conducted it.
Thank you. We've done a lot of hard work.
I feel like I feel seen. If I were the student and you were my teachers, I'd be like, wow, you really read my assignment.
A lot of listening as well, to build off what you're communicating with us.
As you shared a lot, and I learned a lot from you, from your podcast to everything that you shared. It was like, wow, like these aspects I never thought about. You expanded my thinking. You allowed me to see more than the narrow vision.
I appreciate that.
So for LGJ Sports Media, we have this tradition where when we have guests, we have them sign our backboard right over here.
All right.
And will you be willing to sign it?
Of course. Thanks for listening to our latest episode of Innovations in Education, where we bring education leaders who have made things work in the education sector. If you like this episode, please subscribe so that you can hear more great content around innovations in education. I've been your host, David Adams, and have a great day.